Houston, Texas, 9:42 p.m. The rain came down like the sky had split open. Muddy water rushed through the streets carrying trash leaves and the sound of thunder that roared like someone tearing open the city's chest. I was pedaling down Maple Ridge when I saw something that nearly stopped my heart. In the torrent swirling around a storm drain, a mother Doberman thin, soaked trembling, was being pulled halfway into the mouth of the drain. Her claws scraped hard against the concrete edge, screeching like knives against glass. Two tiny puppies, no more than 3 weeks old, stood shivering on the curb, their round eyes wide in terror, whining hoarsely over the roar of the storm. One tried to crawl toward its mother, slipped, and nearly fell in. The other leapt forward, blocking it, using its small body as a shield, letting out a weak cry, "Ugh! Mama." I froze. My legs wouldn't move. The water was already up to my ankles, then my knees in seconds. Rain hammered against my helmet like a storm of bullets. The Doberman opened her mouth, foam spilling from her lips as she tried to breathe, but half her body was already trapped by the current. She didn't bark. She just let out a sound that wasn't really a sound, it was fear itself shaped into breath. I threw my bike down and ran toward her. "Hang on, girl. Hold on," I shouted, my voice trembling. My hands caught her leg. It was ice cold, skin torn from the concrete. Water slapped against my face. She slipped another inch. I pulled harder, every muscle shaking. "Don't you dare go. You hear me? Don't go." She looked at me, those dark eyes wide, not in fear, but in the pleading of a mother begging for her children's lives. In that look, I saw a whole world collapsing, a scream that no language could hold. I pulled again, my shoulder burning like it would tear apart. She let out a cry, raw, sharp, and then slipped free from the edge. I nearly fell backward, but caught her, my hand sliding over her wet fur. The water surged around us like a wall. Lightning flashed behind me, and in that white burst I saw the two puppies trembling, staring straight at me, as if they knew I was their last hope. Then I heard the metallic clang. The storm drain cover flipped open, slamming against the road, missing my head by inches. I yanked her up, her body rising out of the water. Her neck was bound by a frayed, oil-soaked rope. Someone had tied her there so she couldn't crawl away. My stomach turned. She hadn't fallen in. She'd been left there to die. I pulled out my pocket knife and sliced the rope. She collapsed onto the curb, gasping. Her two puppies scrambled toward her, pressing their tiny faces into her chest, licking her face, crying softly. I knelt beside them, my hand on her chest. Her heart was still beating, weak but steady. The rain didn't stop. Water poured across the road like a river. No one else was there. Not a single car slowed down. It was just me, her, and the two fragile lives clinging to what was left of her breath. I took off my jacket and draped it over her. "I'm here. I won't let you die," I whispered. Then I pulled out my phone. The lens fogged my hand, shaking, and hit record. "If you see this," I said, between ragged breaths, "don't look away. This is happening right now. She's fighting for her babies in a flood in your city." I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I was afraid that if she died, at least someone would know she existed. At that moment, lightning struck a power station nearby and the whole block went dark. The sound of rushing water grew louder, swallowing everything. I heard a crack, and a metal bar crashed to the ground beside me, missing my head by inches. I stumbled back, gasping. The Doberman was still breathing, eyes open. I grabbed her leg tightly. "No, you're not going anywhere, not tonight." I leaned down, pressing my forehead to hers. "Listen to me, girl. If there's one heartbeat left in you, I'll pull you through this storm." And just then, a car's headlights pierced through the alley, cutting through the rain like a blade of white fire. A figure stepped out holding a torn umbrella. The light caught her face, a woman, eyes wide, filled with horror and determination. She shouted over the rain, Don't move, hold her tight. I turned heart pounding. The rain, the flooding drained the breath, the light, they all blurred together. I didn't know her name, but I knew this that night, the three of us. The mother Doberman, her two pups, and me were not going to die in that storm. I couldn't sleep that night. The rain kept hammering on the tin roof, dripping through every crack like needles pricking my ears. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her eyes, the Doberman's eyes. That look wouldn't leave me. There was something behind them more than fear. It was a memory. It was a story buried in silence. 2 days earlier, in a forgotten corner of an abandoned market on Edison Boulevard, the walls were covered in graffiti littered with trash and shards of glass. Someone had left a torn cardboard box by the wall. Faded letters across the lid read, "Tomatoes, product of Mexico." Inside, a mother Doberman lay curled up, her body thin as dry bone, surrounded by two tiny pups, whose eyes had just opened, still carrying the scent of milk and blood. There was no blanket, no water, only a greasy, gas-soaked rag. She didn't bark, she didn't whine, she just breathed and trembled. Each time a truck roared past, dust and diesel smoke covered the box, and the two little ones pressed closer to her chest. People said she used to live behind a house in Willow Creek with a widow named Mrs. Landers, who used to feed her every day. But when her belly started to swell, the woman's voice changed. She's not a pet anymore. She's a problem. One July morning, the heat hit 102 degrees. Mrs. Landers called her son, tied the dog with an oily rope, and dumped her by the fence. Let her figure it out. The Doberman stood there watching the iron gate close, listening to the click of the lock, then turned and walked away, not barking, not scratching, just quietly leaving. From that day on, she and her pups wandered. She found the abandoned market a corner where the wall blocked the wind, where sunlight reached only in the morning. She stayed there, guarding every breath her puppies took her body, shielding them from the sun. Daylight burned like fire. Night froze like glass. Sometimes someone tossed her a scrap of burger or an empty taco box. She'd carry it back, lick every crumb, then let her pups nurse before she ate. One morning, a soda-selling boy stopped by trying to pick up one of the pups. She growled softly, not to bite, just enough to say no. The boy stepped back and left a can behind. She nudged it toward her pups, letting them lick the last cool drops inside. But that market wasn't a kind place. Teenagers gathered there after school, throwing bottles, laughing when she flinched. One of them kicked the box, sending the pups rolling out. She lunged and clamped onto his pant leg. He kicked her in the chest. The sound was dull, like a stick snapping. She collapsed, gasping. The boys walked off, their laughter hollow in the empty stalls. She crawled back to the box, dragging herself inch by inch. Her legs trembled. Blood dripped from her mouth. But when her pups cried, she still curled her body around them. From that day, she never left the box again, only crawled out to dig through trash for food. The first rain came like a warning. Clouds gathered, the wind rose, and soon the whole street turned into a filthy river. She tried to push the box higher. The cardboard soaked through, softened, and tore apart. The two pups rolled into the water. She panicked, bit into the box's collar flap, tried to pull, but the current fought back. She shoved them toward the curb, scraping her chest raw against the concrete. Then she slipped, half her body sucked into the mouth of a drain. The old rope from the day she'd been tied still hung around her neck, and it caught on the bars. The flood rose, ripping everything away. She screamed, but no one heard. Only the rain, the hiss of water rushing through metal, the desperate cries of her two pups on the curb. A man passed by and saw it all. He shook his head. "Ain't my problem," then walked away. 2 days later, when the real storm hit, she was still there, still tied by that same rope. The only difference was that this time a boy stopped his bike, threw down his bag, and ran into the water. "Eli, Now I understand why when I grabbed her leg that night, she didn't scratch or fight. She'd already known too much pain from human hands, but in that moment, she still believed in me. I think maybe the ones who've been hurt the most are the ones who trust the deepest. And that night in the rain through mud and thunder, I learned something no textbook could ever teach. When trust still exists, life is never truly lost. I looked out the window. The rain hadn't stopped. Thunder rolled far away, but inside me something else stirred soft, warm, and unyielding. The sound of the Doberman, the sound of a promise. You found me once. Don't stop now. And I knew, come morning, no matter what, I'd go back. Because sometimes a life begins again, exactly where the world chose to abandon it. The morning after the storm. Houston was strangely quiet. The sun broke through thin clouds, pale and hesitant, as if the city itself couldn't believe it had survived the night. I rode my bike back toward the old market, my heart pounding not from fear, but from something deeper, something I couldn't name. The mother Doberman was still there lying by the curb, drenched and trembling, her two pups huddled against her side. I ran to her. She was wheezing eyes, half-open breaths, short and shallow like air fading through a crack. I placed my hand on her chest. It was still warm. Her heart still beat faint as a thread. Hang in there, girl. I came back. I took off my hoodie and covered her. The two pups licked my hand, their bodies icy and shaking. A man in a pickup truck stopped and rolled down his window. Kid, get away from that thing. It could bite. She's dying, I said, voice breaking. Then call animal control. That's not your job. His tires splashed through the flooded road, leaving a cold exclamation mark behind. I watched him go, anger rising, then hollowing into nothing. A couple passed by under an umbrella. The woman tugged her husband's arm and whispered, "Poor thing." But it's just a stray. They left too. It was only me, her, and the two little ones. Inside, a voice whispered, "If I walk away, who will come back?" I pulled out my phone. 9% battery. I dialed 911. "Emergency. What's your situation?" a woman's voice asked. "There's a dog, a Doberman, stuck near the storm drain on Maple Ridge. She's hurt. Is anyone in immediate danger?" "She is, sir. We're prioritizing human rescues right now due to the flood. Please stay clear and—" The line crackled and died. The screen went black. No one was coming, no one. I lifted her in my arms. She was lighter than I expected, like she was made of bones and water. I slid the two pups into my backpack, leaving a gap for air. "I'm taking you home, okay? You're not dying here." The road back was knee-deep in murky water trash floating all around. I slipped, more than once fell hard, and she let out a low moan. I pressed my fingers to her neck. Her pulse was faint. Just a little longer, girl. By the time I reached the old motel where my mom worked the night shift, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of bleach mildew and cold coffee. My mom was behind the counter, her uniform damp and wrinkled. "Eli, what in God's name, you're soaked." "She was drowning, Mom. I couldn't leave her." She looked at me, then at the dog in my arms. Her eyes were tired, dry, like someone who'd seen too much defeat to cry anymore. "Honey, we can't even pay rent next week. We can't feed a dog. She's not a dog, Mom. She's a mother." My mom fell silent. Her voice softened, almost pleading. "Please don't make this harder." I stood there listening to the dry hiss of the air conditioner and the pounding in my chest. I understood her. I understood what poverty does. It strangles compassion before compassion can breathe. But if I gave in, I'd lose the last piece of who I was. I held the Doberman tighter. felt her weak breath against my arm. Then I'll do it myself. Mom didn't say another word. She just turned away, one hand pressed to her forehead like someone watching their child choose a road with no return. I took an old blanket from the storage room, wrapped the dog in it, and opened the door. The cold wind rushed in, carrying the smell of mud gasoline in a city trying to dry its tears. I heard her voice behind me. "Eli, where will you go? I don't know. But someone has to care." I walked out, through streets buried in trash, past houses caked in mud. The streetlights flickered, reflecting on puddles like broken veins of gold. The backpack on my shoulders moved, the pups were stirring. I whispered, "Hang on, babies. I got you." With every step, it felt like I was carrying the whole world. No one had ever taught me how to save a life. But something deep inside told me this: sometimes doing what's right doesn't need anyone's permission. The Doberman stirred. I looked down. Her eyes were half open, looking straight at me. "Almost there," I said softly. She didn't know who I was, but she trusted me with the kind of trust that had been stolen from her for far too long. In the distance, the last rumble of thunder rolled away. The rain had finally stopped. I saw the glow of a bus stop light ahead. Across the road, a figure appeared, slender, holding a torn umbrella, a white lab coat stained with mud. She saw me. I saw her. "Oh my God, hold her steady," I froze. She ran toward me, kneeling in the puddle, eyes bright with both shock and compassion. "I'm Dr. Grace Mitchell. Give her to me." And in that moment, for the first time in 48 hours of despair, I wasn't alone anymore. If you're still listening now, don't turn away. A 12-year-old boy didn't walk off because he believed kindness still exists. And if you believe that too, then stay with this story. She knelt before me in the cold puddle, her white lab coat stained with mud and blood, her wet hair plastered to her forehead. Her eyes were bright, focused, and eerily calm, the kind of calm you only see in people who've watched too many lives hang on their last breath. "Give her here," she said firmly. I shifted the mother Doberman into her arms. She let out a soft gasp, not from disgust, but from horror at what she saw. The dog's neck was cut deep as if by wire. The wound was caked with mud and blood turned black. Her nails were split, her belly sagged, her fur matted with milk. But what broke me was that her eyes were still open, still looking at me. "She's still fighting," Grace whispered. "Can you save her?" I asked. "Not here. We need to move now." She dug through her bag, pulling out an electrolyte bottle, gauze, antiseptic gel, her hands moving fast, almost faster than breathing. They trembled from the cold, but never lost precision. She cleaned the wound and pressed gently. The Doberman whimpered, body tensing, then easing again as if she knew this woman meant no harm. "You've got strong babies," Grace murmured, glancing at the two tiny pups curled inside my backpack. "What's your name, kid?" "Eli." "All right, Eli. I need you to hold that flashlight steady, okay? Don't blink no matter what happens." The light from my phone reflected off the rain dripping down her face. Her hands worked through the storm, urgent but tender, as if she were stitching together a soul about to tear. When she poured a few drops of serum into the dog's mouth, I heard her whisper, almost a prayer, "Come on, girl. Not tonight, not like this." Then she looked at me, her gaze clear and firm. "We're not letting her die in a gutter." I knotted my throat tight. "Where do we go?" "My place," she said steadily. "Hope Alley Rescue behind the old farmer's market. It's not much, but it's dry. You help me carry her." "Yes, ma'am." Together we lifted her. Her body was heavy, as if she carried the weight of the storm itself. I held her head. Grace supported her hips. With each step we took, the flood pushed back against us, but Grace never stopped. Streetlights shimmered on the water like shattered mirrors. Our two shadows, one tall, one small, pushed through the rain, holding on to a fading life. She opened the door of an old SUV, tossed her medical kit into the back seat, and spread her lab coat as a blanket for the Doberman. I held the backpack close inside the pups, whimpered softly, searching for their mother's scent. "Stay with me, Luce," Grace whispered. "Luce," I repeated. It means light, because even in the dark, she's still shining. She turned the key. The engine coughed, then came alive. Headlights cut through the rain, illuminating a rusted sign on the wall of the old market, Maple Ridge. "Produce, the very place where this all began." Inside the car, I watched the Doberman's chest rise and fall faintly. Each breath sounded like paper rubbing together. I took her paw, rough, scraped, trembling. "You're safe now," I whispered. Grace glanced at me through the mirror. "Eli, tonight's gonna be long. You sure you can handle this? I didn't come this far to stop now." Silence filled the space. The rain hammered the roof. But inside, there were only the steady breaths, hers, mine, and the Doberman's fragile rhythm of life. Ahead, a small sign glowed in the dim yellow light, "Hope Alley Rescue." And below it, fading letters hand-painted, "Long ago, where no one dies alone." Grace smiled, cut the engine, and took my hand. "We made it. Let's bring her inside." I nodded, and as I pushed open the warped wooden door, I realized the storm might have passed, but the real battle had just begun. The small room inside Hope Alley Rescue glowed under a single yellow bulb. The smell of iodine, alcohol, and rain hung in the air. The wall clock read 11:47 p.m. Grace laid the Doberman, Mother Luce, onto a dry blanket and wrapped a heating pad around her chest. I sat beside her, my hand never leaving her paw. The two pups nestled against their mother's chest, trembling like two separate hearts. Grace spoke softly, as if afraid her voice might shatter the fragile thing floating between us. Pulses weak, temperatures dropping. I glanced at the thermometer, 96 degrees, then 95.3 degrees. Is she dying? Grace didn't answer. She just inhaled, drew a syringe-mixed medication, and dripped a few drops of glucose into Luce's mouth. Not if she keeps fighting. The room was so quiet I could hear the rain easing outside the porch. Only the sound of broken breathing remained, sometimes long, sometimes short threads connecting two worlds. Each time her breath hitched, my chest tightened. Grace checked her pupils, then stepped back, hands clasped. She's right at the edge, Eli, between life and nothing. I leaned down and pressed my forehead to hers. You hear me, girl? You don't get to quit, not after all that. One of the pups stirred, climbed up her mother's chest, and licked the corner of her mouth. A single drop fell from her muzzle. I didn't know if it was water or a tear. And then, a faint exhale. Luce's body tensed, then trembled. Grace. She moved easy. Don't startle her. Grace bent over, pressing her hand to Luce's chest. One beat, two, then a third, stronger. She drew a breath, her eyes lighting up. Her heart's picking up. I cried before realizing it. My eyes burned, my throat locked. I laughed through tears. You did it, girl. You did it. Grace didn't respond. She simply sat beside me, gently, wiping Luce's face, whispering as if to a child. That's it, Mama. You're safe now. No more rain. The storm outside had stopped completely. Only the wind remained. In the weak yellow glow, Luce lay still, her breathing steadying. The pups slept against her belly, their small bodies rising and falling with hers. I watched it all, a scene I knew I'd never forget. No applause, no spotlight, just a life returning from the edge and a woman who refused to let it slip away. Grace leaned back against the wall, eyes closed. You see, Eli, she murmured, sometimes the only miracle left is not walking away. I nodded, tears tracing down my face. Outside, dawn began to pierce the misted window. And I knew from that night on, it wasn't only Luce who'd been saved. I had to. Part 6, 3 days later. Houston woke under sunlight. The puddles dried, leaving behind the smell of wet clay and gasoline. But inside that small room at Hope Alley Rescue, there was another kind of light, warm golden, and soft as a thank you. Luce could lift her head now. The wound on her neck had closed. Her breathing was calm. The two pups tumbled around the bed, nipping at each other's tails, their tiny barks mixing with my laughter, breaking the silence that had haunted the place for days. Grace stood by the door, phone in hand. She replayed the video I'd filmed during the storm, the shaky wet footage, my voice yelling, "Don't look away," drowned in rain. She turned to me with a small smile. "The world needs to see this, Eli. Not for views. For truth." I nodded. We uploaded the clip to the shelter's small page with the caption, "The Doberman who fought a storm and wasn't alone." Neither of us thought much of it, but 12 hours later the number on the screen made my breath catch. 100, then 1,000, then 50,000 views. Below it, hundreds of comments poured in. "I'm crying. That boy's heart is pure. How can I help? Hope Alley." This story saved my faith in people. A day later, it was on the local news. A reporter came to the shelter, the camera panning over Luce, lying on the mat, her neck wrapped in white gauze, eyes half closed. I stood beside her, shaking so badly I could hardly remember my lines. "Why didn't you walk away?" the reporter asked. I swallowed hard, voice cracking, because she was crying, and I realized the world already has enough people walking away. The room went silent for a few seconds. Then the lights flashed and Grace reached over, squeezing my hand. 3 days after the segment aired, Hope Alley turned into a wave of kindness. People knocked on the door, carrying bags of kibble medicine, blankets, handwritten letters, even crayon drawings of Luce standing in the rain, her eyes shining like stars. A man from the city drain department, the same team responsible for the storm pipes, came to see Grace. "We saw the footage," he said hoarsely. "We failed her that night, but that kid reminded us why we do what we do." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a medical voucher and a note that read, "For Luce and for Hope." That evening, sunlight streamed through the window, falling across the words painted on the wall, "Where no one dies alone." I sat beside Luce. She lay her head on my leg. Eyes closed, her breathing slow and even like a lullaby. I whispered, "You see, girl, the world came back for you." Grace answered softly from behind me, "No, Eli, she brought the world back for us." And for the first time in my life, I believed that sometimes all it takes, a glance, a hand, a trembling video, is enough to change an entire city. A month after the storm, the world felt different. Houston was still loud, still restless, but in the small corner of Hope Alley Rescue, there was a peace I'd never known before. In the mornings, sunlight slipped through the thin curtain, laying a soft gold glow across the rug where Luce rested with her 2 pups. Her black and tan coat had regained its sheen, her neck wrapped in a red scarf. Grace joked, made her look like a war hero who actually won. The pups, Nova and Flint, were big enough now to chase leaves across the backyard. Every time I called their names, they stopped, looked back at me with eyes. I understood the eyes of someone who'd been saved and would never forget it. I was sketching the storm that night, Luce trapped in the drain, me kneeling in the rain, when Grace walked in holding her phone. "Eli," she said, her voice trembling with joy, "the video hit 5 million views this morning, and we've got donations from 32 states. I looked at her, then at Luce. I couldn't speak. I just knelt and wrapped my arms around her neck. "You did it, girl. You saved more lives than you'll ever know." Grace smiled through tears. "It's not just her, Eli. It's you too. You listened when the world didn't." That evening, we hung a small wooden sign over the shelter door. Carved in my own uneven handwriting, it read, Here, love beat the storm. People still stopped by strangers, those who'd seen the video bringing food medicine, or simply sitting beside Luce stroking her head and whispering, "Thank you for surviving." I asked Grace, "Do you think she knows everything that happened?" She smiled softly, maybe not with her head Eli, but she feels it. That's what love does, it stays even when words can't. That night we sat together on the porch. Luce lay between us, her two pups curled at her feet. Above us, stars shimmered through the old tin roof, twinkling like the city lights miles away. Grace spoke, her voice a quiet prayer to something unseen. Sometimes Eli saving one life changes thousands. Sometimes it saves the one who tried. I looked down at Luce, then at my hands. The same hands that once trembled in the rain, and for the first time in my life I saw they were strong enough to hold hope. If you've stayed with us until this moment, thank you truly, because you've just walked through the journey of a life the world once forgot, and of a boy who believed kindness could outlast the storm. Maybe you've had a moment like that too, a pair of pleading eyes, a faint cry no one else heard. The question is, would you walk away or would you stop? Because sometimes all it takes is one person stopping to save an entire world. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share so others can witness the miracle of Luce the Doberman who turned a storm into light. And leave a comment below. Do you believe one small act can save a life? Or simply drop A for every soul that's ever been left out in the rain? Thank you for feeling, for crying, and for not looking away. Because maybe, just maybe, you're the miracle someone out there is still waiting for.